Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Aiming 5-Hole podcast. I'm Phil with Ryan. Coming up this week, we'll provide our commentary on the opening week of the season for my Leafs and his Habs. We'll also go around the league talking about news from the week 1, who's struggling, who's off to good starts, and some of the milestones that occurred this week. In addition, given our media experience, we'll give our point of views on the new Amazon behind-the-scenes series Face Off that launched in early October. And we'll also talk about Amazon's first broadcast in Canada. Hey, Ryan, how's it going? How's south of France?
It's going well. I'm here at a television market, and it's been a wonderful trip from LA to France with a 9-hour time difference. So I've literally slept. I don't know. I've been awake for about 67 out of the last 72 hours. So it's been a bit of a rough ride, but I'm having fun.
You look good, though. You look good.
Thanks. Just got back from dinner, had a couple glasses of wine, so I'm pretty loose for this thing.
I actually used to attend this as well, and I've answered the one age-old question we used to always say to each other.
Which
if
is?
we weren't paying the bill ourselves, and it wasn't the company paying for it, would you attend this festival? And I've answered it for myself. The answer was no.
The answer was no. Well,
but I am jealous.
I'm not
miss seeing everybody and whatnot, but let's get started. Let's chat about the week.
You're missed here, Phil.
I appreciate that. Let's start and chat about the week. How do you feel your first week for your Habs went?
All right. Well, look, I predicted they'd be a 500 team. They're 2-3-1, so they're not quite there. They've had some ups. They've had some downs. Look, Cole Caulfield, 6 goals in 6 games. We knew he was probably going to be better off from a shooting percentage perspective than he was last year, and he's off to a fantastic start. Lane Hudson, what more can I say about him? He's probably already one of the most entertaining guys to watch in the league.
He's reminding me a bit of Cale Makar.
A little bit of Cale Makar, right? Like, yeah, like small, water buggy, crazy skills. On the downside, however, I think Mike Matheson has looked, decent offensively, but he doesn't look like the same guy defensively. David Savard, has been paired with rookies, and I don't know whether they're dragging him down or he's just not playing well, but he's minus $1 million. Kirby Dach, recovering from his, knee surgery, looks not like the same guy. Obviously, I got to give that guy plenty of leeway. It takes forever to really come back confidently from these injuries, but I think he's minus 6 or minus 7 and not really contributing that much offensively. So there's pluses and minuses. The best part of it, from my perspective, having been a long-suffering fan since the Stanley Cup Finals, is that they're entertaining as hell. Like, they're playing a really fun brand of hockey. It's great. I think Marty St. Louis is on the right track with them, and I'm loving it.
I've actually watched a number of their games past week, and I gotta agree with you. They're young, fast looking, like they're going to be a real fun team, but they're young right now. They're making a lot of mistakes, especially when they're in games like they were against LA later in the week, and blew it because of defensive lapses in their own end. But they're going to get there. And look, you're allowed to live off of the success of their opening game last week against the Leafs and shutting them out. So I'll give you that shout out early on and let you have your glory. But I would say same thing with the Leafs so far. Let's just remind everybody, this is so early in the season. We're week 1 into it, and we're already giving criticisms now. But you know what? This past week, watching the Leafs, it's a different brand of hockey they're playing, and I got to say, I'm really enjoying it. A lot of people would say, well, Phil, you love the fire bandwagon hockey, and this is more the boring version that Berube did, but they're being held accountable for their play, and that's what he said he was going to do, and that's what he's doing. They had I'm going to use one reference to point this out, is that their game on Wednesday night, I don't think you saw it because you're over there in France, but they are blowing the doors off of LA Kings, playing their new style, winning puck battles, getting down low. They were up 5-0 after the first 2 periods, and they opened the third period, and all of a sudden we saw the same old dumb ass Leafs losing puck battles, trying to make plays they shouldn't be making, giving away the puck. And in the first 10 minutes, LA scored 2 goals. And lo and behold, at the 10-minute mark of the third period, up 5-2, Berube called a timeout. And on national television, and I'm glad the network stayed with it, berated them for 30 seconds. Absolutely lambasted them. You don't know what he's saying, but if you could read lips, we couldn't say most of it on this podcast. And they finished the game strong again and got back to it. And I'm happy to see that. And I think it paid off this weekend, the last night's game against the Rangers. Although they lost 4-1, two of them were empty net goals, but they looked good. They outshot the Rangers. I thought they played hard, and this was going to be a game where they were going to really sort of calculate or what's the word I'm looking for? See, range themselves against a team that is predicted to go to the Stanley Cup final. I thought they did really well.
That's great. That's great. I mean, it's nice to feel good about the brand of hockey your team is playing and
Yeah.
not just sort of squeaking by. Look, I grew up in the Patrick Waugh and the Carey Price era, so like any of the winning teams that we had were like, you know, your goalie was stealing most of the games, and
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
and so it's the opposite for you the last couple of seasons is like, can you overcome whatever toughness or defensive
Right.
shortcomings that you had?
Right. And then it was nice to see Matthews scored again last night. So he's gotten off the snide
Does
and
he have two now?
scoring. Got two now.
Okay.
And I just think that, again, it's early in the season, but it's good to see the change of play. Look, can they sustain this over 82 games and then into hopefully what is the playoffs? Who knows? But there's
So
early
have you
indication that they've changed. What we talked about last week was that they didn't have to play better, they had to play different. And so far, in the good times, they're playing different, which is great.
So did you have your trade Marner sign taken down outside the
No.
Scotiabank Center?
No,
It's still up.
let's
It's
hold on to that for a few months yet. We got some milestones to
okay.
come
I mean,
along here.
that's expensive billboard space, Phil. I don't
Absolutely.
know.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll talk about that for weeks to come, and we'll see what happens. But let's chat about what happened around the rest of the week. What's some surprises and that we saw around the league this past week? What do you
Well, I
got?
mean, of course you've got in the last week and a half some very surprising teams still playing like crap, right? You
Oh,
got Nashville, Colorado, and Edmonton, who are all Stanley Cup finalist worthy teams, and they are struggling to keep the puck out of their net.
wow. But that's the thing. It's not that they're just losing. It's how they're losing. They're losing big time. Like Nashville is over 5 games is minus 13. Colorado is minus 11. Edmonton's minus 12. They're having Edmonton's having the same problems they started last year defensively and can't keep the puck out of their net and can't seem to get the goal scoring going. But you don't expect that out of Nashville and especially not out of Colorado.
Well, you especially don't expect it out of Nashville of the three teams. They're the one that just dumped all that money into the goaltender position
Well,
all the way through too.
and they added two prolific goals, 40 goal
Yeah,
scorers, and they can't score. Last night, Stamkos scored his first goal on the power play, or his first goal period, but it was on the power play. But they can't seem to score either. They're losing and losing big. Look at again, it's early, and we've 5, 6 games in, but some disturbing trends have started. As we know, we're only a bit over a month away from Thanksgiving, which we said was a pivotal point in
that's right.
playoff success. So, and conversely, I think you mentioned it correctly. Who suspected the Flames to get off to a 4-0-1 start? They gave away their goalie in the offseason. They have absolutely come out and said they're in a real build mode, and they're 4-0-1 and they're +8. They're scoring and they're keeping the puck out of the net. Who would have thought it?
Well, first of all, there's when you think you're in a rebuild mode, sometimes the teams go into effort mode.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Huberdeau has rediscovered whatever it is makes him Jonathan Huberdeau.
Yeah.
And this Papasil guy is turning out to be a bit of a star
Yeah.
who I've never really even heard of.
Yeah.
But so they're playing. They're
Well, that
playing.
disturbs me. You're on the West Coast. You get to see them more than I do.
Yeah,
I know you.
I
You're
got to be
watching your
honest.
Kings. You're watching your Kings. You're watching your Habs. You're
I'm
watching that other
watching
team.
between the Habs, Oilers, and Kings. It's going to be hard for me to take in too much other hockey,
Yeah.
but
The other
yeah,
one I
it's
have
all
to hand you.
shocking.
Yeah. The other thing I have to hand you because you called this in our first show in the playoff show. You called Utah getting off to start and potentially being a playoff team. And they're off to a 4-1-1 start, +2. So they're grinding games out, winning them close. Which again, early, a lot of things can happen between now, but off to a good start.
And their young guys are
Yeah,
doing it, right? Like Clayton Keller is playing like the star he was drafted to be. Dylan Gunther, I knew he would be good. I didn't think he'd get off to this kind of start. He's fantastic. So I
yeah,
think Utah, they're a fun team to watch too. I caught a couple periods of one of their games, and I thought it was a blast.
yeah.
So and their crowd seems really into it, and they're clearly feeding off of that. So
Well,
I'm standing by that prediction. I'm
yeah,
looking
well,
pretty good right now,
your
but I'm
predictions are
standing
looks
by it.
yeah, you're looking better than I am because I predicted Detroit and Buffalo to make the playoffs, and both of them are off to pretty bad starts again early and whatnot, but they're still showing a lot of the wares that they showed last year and off to sub 500 starts. And conversely, the Ottawa that you picked is off to a decent start, 3-2, and looking pretty good and whatnot. But um, it's early. We got lots of season to go, and we'll see what happens. But so far, it's been an entertaining week. Lots of good hockey. Lots of different things have happened so far this week. There's a couple of milestones we've talked to. Where
There
do
was
you
a
want to
couple
start
of
with the
milestones.
milestones? What do you
So
want to talk
before
about?
we get to the milestones, the Crosby and Malkin milestone, because I really want to focus on that. I want to focus on for one sec. Let's just call it the social media moments of the week. And there were three of them. There were three of them that I want to highlight. Number one was the Gustafson goalie goal. I always love to see a goalie goal. I love the way the players mob the goalies after it happens, and I like it when it's a goalie like that I like, and not like a jerk like when Ron Hextall did it or something like that back in the day. The second one was Heischer scoring two goals in like what was it, 18 seconds or
Yeah,
something like that on because that was just
crazy.
beautiful, especially because both of those goals were off good forecheck steals.
Yeah.
And the first one he cashed in on somebody else's steal, and the second one was an individual effort. Absolutely fun to watch. Love to see social media make a big thing of that.
Yeah.
And then there's the number one social media moment of the week from the NHL. And I think you know where I'm going
You
with
sent
this.
this to me. I couldn't stop laughing. I had to watch it 5 or 6
The
times.
Joey Daccord missed celebration was probably one of the funniest goalie moments I've seen in
It's like the
ages.
pile just moved over on him. He went to that leap into the pile, and everybody went, goaltender's wearing 40 pounds of equipment. We're not letting them land on us, and they moved on him.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen it,
Go look at
please
it.
just Google it. Go find it. It is one of the funniest things. Joey Daccord is trying to join the pile on a overtime goal, I guess, and he just misses the whole thing and goes ass over tea kettle, and it is so funny.
Absolutely funny. And for those few listeners that we have, we'll put it up on our Instagram account, Aiming Five Hole
Yes,
Instagram account. We'll put a few of these videos up because they were pretty funny. And that was spectacular.
that one.
I just couldn't. I had to. It's one of those ones you watch over and over when you just get a chuckle and you go and show everybody. You send all your buddies. It was absolutely hilarious. But
It
let's
was
get
so
on to
great.
the more cool,
Yes.
serious things that happened.
Okay.
You start, and then I've got an anecdote, but the last one.
Okay. So you got Malkin and Crosby reaching the milestones in point score that we talked about earlier in episode one, I guess. And it just got me to thinking, is this duo the most weirdly unappreciated duo in hockey history? And I mean that like people are like crazy. People talk about Sidney Crosby all the time. I'm talking about these guys as a duo. Like you talked about Gretzky and Curry in the 80s. You talked about Datsuk and Yzerman. You talk about all of these like duo and Kane and Tays
Yeah.
as these guys who won multiple Stanley Cups and they're
Messier
like
and Curry.
Messier. Like these two guys
Or
are
Gretzky
first
and
ballot
Curry.
Hall of Famers. Gretzky and Curry, Curry, Messier. Like, but these guys are two first ballot Hall of Famers, and I feel like we are taking them for granted in some ways.
Yeah, I would agree. I think part of the issue is, and it is for me, obviously we all grew up, especially in Canada, worshiping Crosby and what he was going to do as a player. He's lived up to every one of those objectives. Part of it is just Malkin's personality. Nothing bad to say about the guy, but he's very low key. He doesn't
Yes,
talk really well, doesn't give a lot of interviews. He doesn't say much on the ice. There's times where he's obviously trying, and there's times where he's obviously not trying. And I think that sort of moniker hangs with him throughout his career. But you're right. In terms of a duo, when they're on the ice together, they can just hold the
it's
puck away from
it's unbelievable.
anybody. It's
I,
incredible.
I was in Turin for the '06 Olympics and spent a ton of money to see hockey games, and then the Canadians didn't even make the medal round. But I was at the Russia Canada game, and the guy I noticed more than anybody on the ice, and there's like NHL legends on both sides, this 17-year-old kid who must have weighed 180 pounds soaking wet, but 6'4", 5, whatever it is, was the most noticeable guy on the ice to me. And I was like,
Right.
he's going to be a star.
Yeah.
And then I saw that he'd gotten drafted by Pittsburgh as well. And back then, it's 2006. I knew that he and Crosby were going to be
Right.
absolute legends together.
Right. And after the back-to-back-to-back sort of great success they had with drafting with Fleury, Letang, Crosby, Malkin, like it was like the Edmonton Oilers of their draft years doing, they've not done as much with it. That team
True.
has actually won 2 Stanley Cups, which is actually great. The other great thing I would say about these milestones they achieved, which is for everybody that's listening, if they didn't know, Crosby got 1,600 point milestone, which is a huge milestone. He's one of only, I think, 5 players that have gotten there. Malcolm hit the 500 goal mark for his career. The great thing that happened is that they both did it in the same game,
Same game. Yep.
and Crosby fed Malkin the pass to get his 500. That was fitting to me. That was in
Yeah.
terms of what you said here about the two of them being a dynamic duo, for them to do it in the same game, and Crosby to assist Malcolm on his 500th goal. I just thought that was a fantastic way for it to happen. Got it done early in the season. We can move on and see if they make the playoffs or not, but I think that was great. So
Yeah.
it is fantastic. The other thing that happened this week that I was surprised that because the Hockey Hall of Fame has started to announce their inductees for this year. And whether they've announced the
Yes.
other ones, I probably know if they did or not. But the one that stood out to me was Shea Weber.
Oh, I'm going to hear about this now, right? I know where this is
For
going.
our audience, and even if it's all just 5 of you,
I know
I
where this is going.
remember back in I forget what year it got happened, when Shea Weber got traded to Montreal, and the Habs trade away PK Subban. I remember the moaning and groaning and the almost the point of tears that Ryan was in when that happened, saying this is going to kill the Habs. They're never going to win again. They're trading away the franchise defenseman for this loaf of a guy in Shea Weber. He was literally, people believe me when I say he was crying. I almost had to console him, and I kept saying, wait for it. This guy is a leader. He's a monster on the defensive side of things. He's going to bring a new attitude to this team. He's going to do things for this team. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. PK isn't. And lo and behold, he leads the team. He turns that mentality of that team around. They go on a big run. They get to the Stanley Cup. He played through the injuries that now have ended his career, which just tells you
Yeah,
enough
that
about
Stanley
this
Cup
guy.
run ended his career.
Ended his career. They didn't win, unfortunately. And him and Carey Price were the two biggest reasons that they got through to the final. Unfortunately, losing it. Even I would say that I was rooting for them by the end because it was the two of them. And it was against who they lost to, but it doesn't matter. And now that he's in the Hall of Fame, what do you got to say?
Okay. I'm a big enough man to admit I was very wrong.
I've been
at the
waiting
time.
for this. I've been waiting.
I
for
was
this.
very, very wrong. Look, I was blinded by PK's flash. I was blinded by the fact that he had so beautifully integrated himself into the fabric of the city, and with his work with the Montreal Children's Hospital, and his personality and everything he brought. It was a very non-Montreal Canadiens type of player, and it was nice to see that breath of fresh air. I loved the way he played. I loved some of the great playoff moments he had with Montreal, especially against the Bruins, right? Which just sort of doubles their significance in my mind.
But he
But
was
in
never
the
bringing
end,
that team to the promised land. He was too
I
much of a
guess
defensive
not.
liability. He was too much of my personal thing about PK. I don't know the guy personally, but his broadcasts tell me enough about him. It's all about him. It's why he's worn thin in the places he went, was because it was all about PK. And it looked like that on the ice. It was all about PK. Give me the puck. I'm going to rag it. I'm going to do whatever I can. And like, he was a good player. Don't get me wrong. I wish, again, had fingernails size of his talent. But I just didn't like his style. I didn't like the way he carried himself. And to me, that's what's rubbed me wrong about him, and why I was so excited for you in the Habs when you got Shea Weber, because a complete opposite player.
Yeah, completely the opposite. And yeah, I'll say it again. Uh, this is being recorded,
Yes, I want to
so
hear it. I
it's
want to
going to
hear
be
it.
for posterity. I was very wrong about my reaction to the trade, and you were very right.
That's the part I wanted to hear.
It wasn't so much that I was wrong. You
I
wanted
want to
me to
hear that
say
I
you
was
were
right.
right.
I'm not
You
right a
were
whole hell
right,
of a
Phil.
lot, but I think I was so on that time. And I just remember consoling you and talking you off the ledge. It was so much fun. And it was so good to see that sort of turn over time on that whole thing. So
Oh, it
it
worked
was
out.
it was fun. It was fun. How are we doing on time, Ryan? Because we got a few other things we want to talk about.
Yeah, we got some time.
Okay,
Let's
let's
hit it.
talk about it. Let's talk about it. Again, reminding people of our background. We're both media executives. I spent a lot of time in Canada with TSN. I spent time with NBC Sports. Ryan is still in the industry. I'm doing some production, different things and whatnot. But this week the NHL launched Face Off, which is the box to box production behind the scenes
Hmm.
6-part series behind the scenes of last year's playoffs.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch it on your flight over? I watched all six
Uh,
episodes.
I've watched it.
What
I've
are your
watched it.
thoughts?
I have thoughts.
What are your thoughts?
Uh, so it was a really interesting format, right? To sort of like choose two teams that face each other in the playoffs and then choose a player to profile from each of those teams. Um, I don't believe they selected the most charismatic guys from each of these teams. Either that, or these guys are just very humble and they don't talk about themselves that much. But frankly, Jack Eichel has a really interesting story, and I don't think it was told with enough drama. I think Philip Forsberg seems like a really nice guy, but he's not a very dynamic guy for the camera. Um, and the Jeremy Swayman piece was really cool, I thought, because um, of his contract situation and the pressure he was facing in the playoffs. But as a Canadians fan, that was the worst episode because I'm watching player profiles on Jeremy Swayman, so I've got to be like rooting for a Bruin, and then
It's
Matthew
killing you.
Tkachuk, and I can't root for Tkachuk to
No.
save my life.
Well,
Like,
any of the
by the way,
Kachucks, they're all in it, and it was
they,
just
they try
annoying.
they try to humanize him, like showing these barbecue scenes with his brother and his dad, and I'm like, they're all kind of dicks. Like, I don't
I can't
really
argue with
want
you.
to cheer for this guy.
I can't.
And then I found a little bit some of the kind of documentary editing sort of tropes and techniques to be a little bit weird for my taste as well. Like every time they showed the like a playoff series changing cities after one of the games, they'd show a little 3-second clip of an airplane flying through the air. I was like,
They want to
okay, I
remind you
get
they're
it.
going somewhere. They're
Yeah, I
going
get it.
somewhere.
They're traveling. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
move cities. Like, come on,
yeah.
it
Yeah,
feels a little bit low rent. But
yeah.
um, I just there were there were there were some elements of it that were really compelling, like where they do montages that show how tough the players are and the hits they have to take and the things they got to keep getting up from. And when they show, the moments off the ice, some of those are really sort of compelling and humanizing. Uh, but I felt after a while, unless you were seeing something completely surprising, like Connor McDavid losing his mind in the locker room,
That was a great scene.
it was a great scene. But other than a few things like that, I thought that it started to get into a repetitive rhythm, and it was telling just a different variation of the same story.
Right.
Um, so I I thought it was fine. I'm
Yeah.
glad I watched it, but maybe a B minus.
Yeah, like I have a fairly, I don't want to say a little bit of a different point of view on it. I would give it a passing grade. I'd probably give it B plus, maybe A minus. And the reason I say that is that again, I was involved a little bit with some producers trying to do something similar in the golf space with the women, actually. It's really hard through interviews to figure out who the personalities of the league are. Some of them, Pasternak was going to be a character. Kachuk was going to be a character, but Forsberg is a family guy. He's not a gregarious guy. So it's really trying to thread that balance of knowing the guys you've got on the teams you've got to pick from, picking those guys. I enjoyed the series much more so than I enjoyed the golf series. F11 is fantastic because this same box to box production company did the F1 Drive to Survive, the Golf Full Swing, the PGA Tour Golf Swing, which I think was terrible. And the reason I think it was
I didn't enjoy that
terrible
one
was the
either.
things that you said. You had these rich guys, and all you got is this rich perspective. The golf guys did not, for the most part, some of them did, some of them didn't allow them to get into their life stories about what was going on in their lives. I actually,
Yeah.
so you just saw these rich guys talking about I don't know. The only compelling part when they were talking about Liv. Outside of that, I thought it was really poorly done and manufactured relationships in terms of how they built the series together. So, but let's get back to this one. This
Yeah.
one I thought was, I'm a Leafs fan. I didn't know Nylander and Pasternak had that relationship growing up. So I found that piece compelling. It also unfortunately made me relive the pain of last year's playoffs, and seeing Pasternak be. So I thought that piece was good. I actually thought, as dull as Forsberg is in terms of a character, I thought the story was compelling. It was him and his wife talking about the pregnancy, the challenges of home life versus playing. I thought that they used his lack of energy, you say what you want, energy or compellingness, to turn it into a bit of a good story about family and how that rides in. So I watch it from a
Yeah, I
bit of
feel
a
like I've
different
seen that before
perspective.
though.
Yeah, the piece I thought is Eichel was a little dull because he wasn't interesting enough, because he doesn't have enough
Well,
around him. McDavid
well,
piece I thought was good. And the piece that I thought, as much as I hate them, the Kachuk piece was good because it was the father, the son, the two brothers, the brothers, and
blah
whatnot.
blah
So
blah.
look, I hate them. You know how much I hate the Kachuk family and the players and whatnot. But so from that perspective, I thought it was good. And and Truba was a little boring from the things. But again, you
Yeah, yeah,
have to pick where you're going with this thing before you know what's going to happen in the playoffs. So they picked guys, yeah, so they picked guys and stuff. So, I thought it was a passing grade. I thought it was really good. It'll be interesting how they follow that up, because there'll be a season 2 for sure. They don't do these things one-offs because it's too expensive.
yeah.
But so I give it a
By the
passing grade.
way, by the way, coming back to the Forsberg thing again, and yeah, I've made the point already. Is like the family relationship about to give birth and the wife's role and all that. I feel like I've seen all that before. But what really irked me about it was that they started off with this whole like focus on his ankle injury. They never really explained what it was. They said he
Right.
got a cut and he was
No,
having
you're
like
confusing things.
swelling.
You're confusing things. The Forsberg versus the Daniel or Gabriella Landskov
No,
injury.
no, no, no. I'm
Oh, you're
talking.
right. You're right. You're right. You're sorry.
I'm talking
Forsberg
about the
was, yeah, right,
Forsberg
right. Yeah, you're
injury, and
right.
like
You're right.
they're
You're right.
saying, like they're putting acupuncture needles.
Right.
Like I really didn't ever really have an understanding of how bad this injury was.
Right.
Was there a medical misdiagnosis? Did something get infected? And who's to blame for that? Like that stuff's kind of interesting to me,
Right. Right.
actually.
Right. Right.
Like
Right. Yeah.
kind of like the controversy over Eichel's injury and whether or not he should have had the fusion surgery and all of that.
But they talked about that, but like
They
this much.
glossed it.
They glossed
They
it a little
just
bit.
told that's the most important
But
part of
that's the
his like story through the
superficial stuff that bothers me. And it's I thought they got
yeah
deeper into the relationships, and hockey is just way more action. And it's why the F1 series is so good. They're into the action. And then they talk to the people, and you're
yeah
seeing fast-paced action. Golf is not the same fast-paced sport. So when you talk to these guys and it's slow, and then
yeah
you've got slow highlights. See, I thought they did a really good job of intermixing the highlights with the talking. When it was boring, they got into the highlights. And sorry, you brought up a good point. Again, the Gabriel Landeskog piece here.
there you
Again,
go with the names again.
my pronunciation.
It's the first one
Again,
you've
the
messed up this
same
week.
the same family sort of dynamic. You shared his injury and how bad it was, and how he's been dealing with for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and how Colorado is probably really missing him right now, and the leadership that he
He's the
brings.
captain. Yeah.
So that's why I felt this one was way better in terms of enacting some emotion and whatnot. And part of it is because the Leafs and the piece was it. The other parts is I just enjoy this kind
Yeah.
of thing, and because I've been involved
Okay.
in something serious. But moving on and sticking with Amazon for a second here. Amazon, a big thing happened in Canada this year for our Canadian audience.
Amazon Prime Monday.
Amazon has entered the broadcast landscape in Canada, streaming hockey on Monday nights. So, did you
Yep.
watch it? What did you think?
I watched it. I watched the whole thing. I watched the intermission coverage and all of it. And here are my thoughts. Love Adnan Virk. I think
Yeah,
he's great. I think
very good.
his rapport with the on ice guys was really great. The showing his grad book photo was hysterical. I think Blake looked really nervous. It was her first broadcast,
Yes.
and she's got room to grow. But
Mhm.
she had more often than not fairly interesting things to say, and I think as she gets more comfortable with the role, she's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah. Blake Bolden, for
Um,
those who listening don't know, she was a U.S. national team
U.S.
player.
national player,
She played
and
professional hockey as well in the women's league for a couple of years too.
yeah, look, she's she's not Cassie Campbell yet, but she's got a lot of room to grow. Um, you and I may have different thoughts on that. And Mess was a mess.
And I get why they use, like, my feelings on Messier, legend hockey player, and I get why people want to use him on these broadcasts because you need name appeal. Same way TNT why they hired Gretzky at the beginning. You need
Yeah,
name recognition to get the U.S. audience to understand and to draw them in. But he is not good when it comes to getting out of his head what he wants to say and
no,
getting it out in a
he's
way, articulate way that you can understand what he's saying. The man knows hockey upside down and whatnot, but he's terrible at getting it across and he's terribly boring.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I will say this though, as my final thought on it. The hype video that they put together at the beginning of the broadcast was probably the best hype video for a hockey I've seen in
That's good
years and years and
marketing.
years.
If you
It
can't
was
produce a good
so good.
if you can't produce a good hype hockey video, then you shouldn't be in broadcast.
Yeah, really, it's probably the easiest sport there
Yeah,
is. With
absolutely.
the footage you can just pull out of any random
Yeah,
game. But they did
that's-
such a great job of that. I would rewatch that right now if I
Right.
could. That was
And
that good.
yeah, absolutely. And here's, I'll give them kudos too, because I think if you read their press release for anybody who didn't, they talked a lot about being on the edge of and trying new things and doing different things in the broadcast world, what I thought was good. And again, people got to remember this is in Canada, this is not a US. In
Yeah,
Canada, you cannot go too far out of the normal boundaries of what hockey production is. You can push them a little bit, but they didn't
yeah,
do that in game one. They stuck to a standard broadcast, introduced people to their talent, who up and down I thought was pretty good. Obviously, John Forsland is pretty good. Jody Shelley I could do without, but he's pretty good. But Forsland is a true professional play-by-play
yeah.
guy. I thought he's really good. So I thought up and down they did a really good job. It didn't go into. We've seen enough of what U.S. broadcasters have done to hockey. We don't have to go any further than Fox with the stupid glowing puck and the
Fox
laser
tracks.
Fox tracks. So stupid. People in Canada lost their minds, rightfully so, over this thing, but they haven't done any of that yet. They'll probably
Yeah.
introduce some new things. We'll see how they goes, but hopefully they do it gradually and don't do anything stupid. But for the most part, I agree. They thought they did a good job. And I think that again, in Canada, you can't go that far. Canadian audience is very high education when it comes to hockey. The US and around the world is probably better, but the US in some place in hockey markets, obviously they're very educated, but these series is like Face Off aren't meant for just the hardcore hockey audience,
Hardcore fan.
which is meant for the broad appeal to try and draw people in. And that's why in some cases where they pick like a Philip Forsberg or a Trouba or other players like Kachuk and Pasternak because they're trying to and McCann and Drysdale because they're trying to
They're
draw
trying to
people
market the
in,
game.
trying to market the game to a broader audience and get them there. So that's but
Yeah.
so I would say Amazon overall passing grade to start with. I thought was a good way to go.
So have you seen the ratings? Because like the first thought,
I haven't
without
seen any yet.
knowing the ratings at all, the first thought I thought of at the conclusion of the broadcast was, oh man, when those Canadian broadcast rights come up for bid,
Mhm.
Amazon's going to be a real player.
There's no question. I think everybody in the media industry, especially in the sports media industry, which I know a lot of the guys worked with a lot of them, all believe that it's a fait accompli that Amazon is going to be in the mix. It's why Gary Bettman's introducing. Everybody probably says this was a
It's why Gary Bettman
Rogers.
hasn't
Yeah.
retired.
Well, it's also says that Gary Bettman is very smart. He doesn't necessarily agree with every decision he makes, but he's very smart when it comes to media and how to handle media rights and whatnot. He's done an awesome job in the U.S. With TNT and ESPN taking it away from NBC, who was undershowing it a little bit. And then in Canada, he knows this was not Rogers' idea to do Monday Night Hockey. This was an NHL Gary Bettman mind thing going, I need a third interested party in this market in order to get with this deal coming up that Rogers did, that 10, 12-year deal that was worth billions of dollars. He's not going to match that without another interested party in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And this is his way to introduce Amazon into the hockey world in Canada. If it's done the right way, hockey media rights can do in Canada for a new media player that doesn't have the same coverage as the big players in Canada to what the NFL rights have done for YouTube TV and YouTube.
Yep.
They've put them, they're now the third largest cable distributor in the country in the US. Amazon will leap to the close to the top if they get these rights in some way, shape, or form in Canada.
Yeah,
depending on what
I
rights they
think
get. So
it's
I think it's a great
it's a
job. by
wide
them.
open playing field right now.
Yeah.
Wide open playing field. Well,
So
I think
with
that covers.
that's it. Yeah.
I think that covers our topic list for this week.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job getting it all out.
Thank
We rushed
you.
through it a little bit. It's great seeing you.
It's great.
Thanks for
to
doing
see
this
you
late
too.
at night in France time.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem. And can't wait to do this again next week. I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of fun things are going to happen this week.
Yeah, we're gonna get into a regular flow, a weekly flow now that we're the season is kicked off, and looking forward to another week and continuing to chat about the Leafs, the Habs, and the AHL with you. Have fun and
Awesome, buddy.
Okay.
Have a great one.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.